that up? There it is. Yeah, that's me. That's us. I'm going to show you a little bit about what I'm doing. And there's sound. There should be sound. Yeah, there are some flickering that happens. So if you're light sensitive, maybe look away at parts. Okay, most of those have taken place this year. The people that were involved are here. Some of these shows happened in the past 2 weeks, so I haven't really picked the best parts of the video, but I got some stuff out of them. The only old one is from the premiere performance in Lisbon last year, which was the cellist playing. So why do I do this? What is this and what am I doing? Basically, I used to keep my art and my computer work separate, and at one point I realized that was splitting things too fine, and I really wasn't going to be good at any one of those things, and I decided I could make experimental films using maps, or I could make maps that behave like experimental films. A couple of influences. This is a sideways chunk of 16mm film from a piece called Serene Velocity by a filmmaker named Ernie Gare. This was sort of triggered me, even though it was quite obvious. His film is shot in a long institutional corridor, and the camera adjusts the zoom level. He does 4 frames at this level, 4 frames at this level, and he alternates for quite a bit of time where you get this sort of oscillation in the hallway, and then he steps it up, so you go further and come back further. And again, it's not as, you don't zoom, it's here, and it's here, it's here, and it's here. And by the end of the film, you feel like you're at one end of the hallway and you're being slammed against the other end of the hallway. And the sun's coming up, so actually some windows that you hadn't noticed before start to get light blue. So that part's a little bit poetic. Otherwise, it's quite mechanical. But what's interesting is that even with these strong depth cues, and you imagine you would feel this motion this way, because of the shadows on the wall, the ashtrays, the exit sign, these various things, you get these conflicting cues about what's happening, and sometimes it just kind of flattens out, or sometimes you feel like you're going backwards even though you should be going forwards. So that interested me. And obviously zooms are what we do with maps, so my first experiment was to kind of replicate this phenomenon. It was kind of interesting to me. I also am obviously interested in color flicker. There's a filmmaker named Paul Schertz who worked in the 70s and 80s. These are some 60 millimeter frames where they're mostly two frames of pure color. And again, in a 20-minute film, you start off being able to read these colors, but midway through it, you start getting all these optical after effects, moire patterns that aren't there, colors that aren't there, so on. Kind of interesting to me, that perceptual overload and fatigue. He did some installations with 60 millimeter projectors and an overlap of various color strips. Look like that. And yeah, that's all I have on Paul Schertz. Paul Glebicki is actually a Pittsburgh filmmaker who did these amazing hand-drawn animations before they look like they were done by a computer, but they're not. And a thing that interests me in that sequence is this chair, which also has kind of a very strong 3D perspective to it, and then the lines just come apart and sort of slide down the page. So it's not like it recedes into 3D, it reveals its 2D-ness in its falling apart, and that tension between perspective and non-perspective is interesting to me. And finally, well not finally, but a few other influences are these light installations called Gansfelds by James Turrell, where you're completely subsumed in color and you can't really tell where the walls are anymore, where the floors are. I'm interested in 60s light shows where ensembles would show up with equipment like this and project film, project slides, and move colored water and oil around in trays that would project behind live performance of musicians. And some interest in concrete poetry and experiments with text that's not meaningful, even though it looks like it should be, perhaps. This is the work of a naive artist, James Castle, and a letraset artist, poet named Derek Boulot. So I like all these things, and there's room for this in cartography. So that's what I'm doing, and this is how I'm doing it. My maps are shown using MapLibre, which is a fork of Mapbox.gl. Currently, I'm running OpenMap tiles in TileServer.gl, although I'm starting to look at Brandon Liu's protomaps, because I think that will probably do a better job for me, but the schema of layers is different, so it's not a drop-in replacement. It's going to take a little bit of time to look at that. But really, I hate Docker. I don't know if people use Docker here, but like those things run in Docker, and Docker is like the weak link in all this stuff. My code runs better than Docker seems to. There's a package I use, which I'll show you some things of. It's called Open Stage Control by a French percussionist. That basically allows me to build an interface on my touch surface that I can control all these things. And then there's, I don't know, a couple thousand lines of JavaScript that basically take inputs from my touch surface, send them to my laptop, and turn it into styling and movement instructions. This is what I'm looking at when I'm in performance. This controls colors of the geographic layers and also some of the oscillations and movement. There's some things when I'm not sure what to do next, I can use these. These will just cycle through colors within a particular family. This is something I use to control the margins using CSS, because they are, after all, it's all web browsing, web maps. These are some destinations that I've pre-programmed for visual appeal. Often I collaborate with my musicians to find if there's locations that mean something to them, and I will add them for a performance. Maybe I'll remove them if they're interesting, I'll keep them. And I can also, yeah, some of the things you saw in the video, the top panel are actually GPS traces of walks I've taken in my travels. So I can replay walks and manipulate them. And down below, there's more now, but this is also, I can use OSRM and generate motor vehicle routes and play routes. Yeah, and then there's some stuff for labels. Yeah, I'll say a little bit. So OSC means a number of things. I call my software Carto-OSC. Open stage control is this software. Open sound control is a protocol for sending instructions between musical instruments and other things. What I like about it is that you can create your own namespace, and it looks like URLs. So basically, a thing I might send is /label/country with this payload that says change to Stoke regular 108 pixels high. And then below is a color tuple that sends hue, saturation, lightness, and alpha channel. So that's how the messages fly around. I don't have much time, so what can I say? I perform at home in San Francisco, but I also travel a lot, like I've done on this trip. So a lot of, I do these 50-minute performances, and I would swear I do 12 hours of preparation for each one, and most of that is like listening to people's Bandcamp, watching their YouTube, finding a venue, arranging all this stuff so I can find somebody to perform with. But most people, when I reach them, they're like, yes, let's do this. This sounds like a lot of fun. So I've worked with some really great musicians. Often, music venues are not so big on Q&As, but if you do it elsewhere, gallery or something, maybe a more film audience, there can be very good Q&As with, I'm drawing from cartographers and filmmakers and experimental music people and just curious art people, so the questions can be quite interesting. And yeah, it's been fun to learn what I do when I'm in an improvisation situation. I'm listening to music, I have this arsenal of things I can do. What do I actually choose to do? When I'm doing, yeah, so if you're still in town on Saturday, I'm playing with Theresa Abalos, who's a flute player. This is the prettiest instrument I'll play with. You'll notice some of my stuff earlier was noisy. I think this is going to be quite pretty, although she'll modify some things with electronics because 50 minutes is a long time for a flute player to play. There's a coffee place, which actually has had a number of film screenings. I'm hesitant to point, but it's across the river. It's like a 20-minute walk from here, or less. And I'm also doing a show in Baltimore, concurrent with Phosphor G NA in a couple weeks. I have a mailing list, which is easy to find. Oh yeah, this is just a bunch of people I want to thank, because again, it takes a lot of people to make this stuff happen. So these are people that helped make the Pittsburgh show happen, the DC show, Philadelphia show. I spoke at Brown, and Portland. Portland was great because Libby Bischoff, who runs the Osher Map Library, got very excited and saw this as a STEM kind of event, and she brought in the theater program. And so I did one show with Sigrid at a downtown experimental theater, and then we had the campus theater at the University of Southern Maine with 40 performance students. So that was quite fun. These are places that I had artist residencies where I was able to develop this work. And that's that. Do I have any time left, or am I done? Okay, in that case, I will, this thing sometimes goes to sleep, but hopefully it's not going to sleep. So, this is kind of how it goes. It's fun to be untethered and walk around and do this sort of stuff. I will take a question or two if you've got some. Yes?
Why do you call it synesthete?
So synesthetes are people that, well, just for people who don't, the question is, why do I call it synesthetes? I needed a title for my show. I did this residency in Lisbon, and it was like, you jerk, if you don't actually perform while you're on this residency, you don't deserve to continue doing this. I needed a title. And I came up with a few, and most of them were really pretty bad. And this one was like, okay, this works. So yeah, synesthetes are people whose senses kind of cross over, so they can taste color, or they can, smell music, or these kinds of things. So I feel like the experience is that, and people who've been through it sort of understand that. So an atlas, because there's a variety of settings, so there is a way of, there are different cartographic styles and different locations that happen through a 50-minute performance. So the atlas part is easy, and Synesthete, I don't know, I don't have it, but it's interesting to me. Oh, you do?
Mere touch, not smell or color.
Okay. Well, let's talk after. I'd love to know what that's like over there.
Any other questions? Could you just take it in Slack? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. Or yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.